ready. And we're rolling. Hey, welcome. This is Genesee County Compassion Club Show. How are you today? My name's Jeremy. I'm your host. I'm back here live at allpointstv.com. Glad to be with you. Glad to be a part of the Genesee County Compassion Club, and I'm going to bring you some news today. So thanks for joining the show. Going to let you know what's going on with medical marijuana here in Michigan, get you the updates. Also going to let you know what's going on around the nation with other medical marijuana policies and things to do with marijuana in general. But hey, it's good to be back here in the studio. It's February 10th. We finally got some cold winter weather, and I love winter, so I'm glad to see the snow. I know most of you probably disagree with that, but hey, man, you live in Michigan. You need to learn to love it.
I'm on the phone right now to community mental health here.
Yeah, you're on the phone.
Yeah,
calling me a doctor.
Yeah, that's the keys. He likes that stuff.
Yeah.
They're coming out. They'll say they'll be right there.
Look at all the great exercise you've just gotten in the last 24 hours, John. I mean, would you have done that level of activity if you didn't have the snow?
You know, but actually I would have, because I would actually worked out. But you know, I'd rather be bicycling.
Well, you're one of those productive people, John.
Yeah.
You're weird.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, no, it is cold, so be careful out there. The roads are definitely still icy, and we want you to be safe. But I'm glad winter's here. We don't have a whole lot left of it. Obviously, it's February 10th. It's like the first real snowfall we've gotten. I know we've had hit earlier back in 2015, but I think as far as 2016 goes, this is the first real snow. Does that sound right, John? Am I in a bubble here?
No, you're here. I had a problem with my headphones, and they weren't fitting right. Yeah, they weren't fitting correctly.
Yeah, but no. Back to the subject here. We got obviously it's moving along this year. Things are going good. This is a leap year. I just want to make sure I mentioned that on the show, because you only get to do it once every 4 years. So we got that going on. But also this month going on, we do have our soup kitchen. We always like to serve down at the North End Community Soup Kitchen. It's part of the Catholic Charities group down there, and we're glad to be a part of that. We'll be serving dinner down there February 26th, and that's last Friday of the month. So mark your calendars. If you can help us serve, we'd love to have your help, and it's an honor to be able to do that down there. So I want to make sure I mention that. But other than that, just try to stay warm in February, right? Spring is not far away. That's what I was kind of getting to earlier. And with that, we always have our annual 420 party. So I just wanted to mention that on today's show. Keep that in everybody's mind and give you guys something to look forward to, as far as spring and fun events at the club too. So other than that, the club's been busy. It's been good. It's been a little chilly, but we're working on that, and I appreciate everyone's patience. We've also obviously have the water situation going on here in the city of Flint, and I know everybody's probably sick to death about hearing about this issue. So I'm not going to get into too much detail talking about the story, but I will say that we have been providing water freely to pretty much anybody that needs it. If you guys are listening to the podcast, or you know somebody out in your neighborhood that is not getting access to clean, fresh, healthy water, bring them to the club or let us know, and we'll do whatever we can to help you out. But we do have water. We are giving it away. We have been doing so. We've given away, I don't know how many literal pallets of water we've given away, but it's a lot, and it's truly a testament to our membership. Really thankful that everyone has stepped up and helped out in the fashion that they have, because you guys have certainly impacted some people's lives, and I know we've been getting water to folks that otherwise would not have gotten it. There's a lot of folks out there that are not able to get out of the home, and we've had members actually delivering water to their doorstep for them, and I want to say thank you. That's a huge positive thing, and to let people know that, hey, medical marijuana patients, they're not all bad guys, they're not all crazy, and actually they're some of the most caring individuals out there. So thank you for letting us be a part of that, club members. You guys did that, and
you are the compassion. You put the compassion in the Compassion Club, right?
Well, thank you, John. I mean, that's what we try to do, is live up to the name. So you guys are making that happen. You're putting the compassion actually in the club and not just in the name.
And I've seen other caregivers besides yourself, because I don't want you probably wouldn't want me to go into what I know about what you did to help some of your patients, so it was way beyond the call of your normal duties as a caregiver. But I've seen that also, patterned in other caregivers too, like helping people out on issues that had nothing to do with supplying, giving them help with the medical marijuana. So I mean, beyond that. So you guys are truly compassionate people. So
thank you, John, and I know our members appreciate that. I think that's part of the definition of a caregiver. And if you think you're a caregiver and all you do is provide cannabis, you're not really a caregiver. You need to go the extra step. And we've actually talked about that a little bit on the show. And there's actually a little bit of a legal requirement for you to do that. I mean, you need to have an intimate knowledge of your patient's situation as much as you can professionally, of course, to try to assist them with their debilitating conditions. But it also gives you the opportunity to step up and help out in other ways. Maybe you want to shovel their sidewalk off, or bring them a hot batch of cookies, whatever it is you can do to help out your patients. I know you're already doing it, and that's what makes you a caregiver. So moving on here, I did want to mention that, right now they're starting to talk about in the media, and they're starting to get things put together for this. What I'm mentioning is chelation, all right? You guys can look this up. It is a natural homeopathic method of removing toxic metals from the body. And obviously with having the water issue going on in Flint, this should be something that we're all talking about, and we're all starting to educate ourselves, and we probably need to participate, okay? Chelation is removing those hard, toxic metals from your body, including lead and other metals that you might pick up. A lot of your vaccines that are given nowadays contain various different metals inside of them. Some of them even include things like mercury. And obviously we don't really want those in our bloodstream. And chelation is a natural way of homeopathic treatment to remove those metals out of your bloodstream. It's very simple. It's usually something you can ingest, and then your body naturally would dispel it. And this is something that they're starting to talk about in the mainstream. Again, chelation. And what they're looking to do in the city of Flint is to possibly at least make aware to the general public that there are centers that you can go to either receive chelation treatments or to actually receive the products necessary to begin your own chelation treatment. And what they're looking for is they're looking for places to have a holistic center, number one. Number two, they're looking to have a licensed practitioner. And number three, obviously offer the chelation treatment therapies. I'm proud to say that at the Genesee County Compassion Club, you guys have that. Right next door at the Holistic Center over at the Growing Concern, our members cafe, that is our Holistic Center. That's what we call it. It is the Holistic Center. And we do have a licensed practitioner there, Dr. Shelter, who is a licensed chiropractor and does chiropractic treatments. So maybe you guys didn't know about that, but we already offer that at the club. And we also offer chelation treatment therapies. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Maybe didn't even know that that kind of thing existed. And we're currently, right now, we have applied to be one of the centers in Flint so that people would be aware that, hey, this is out there. It's something that you can go get and receive. And so we put our name on that list. We've not been approved yet, but hopefully we will be. In the meantime, we have those products there, and we're happy to help you learn about them and see if that's something that you would like to institute into your diet. So it's all good stuff, nothing harmful, but I definitely would encourage you to research that, and maybe it's something you want to talk to your physician about. So at any rate, chelation, check it out. It's spelled Chelation. Not like it sounds. Let's see. I mentioned 420. Okay, I got some news items I want to go through today. Different things that are going down in Michigan, and what I want to get started off with is the package of medical marijuana bills that we've talked extensively about on the program here about over the past 2 years, really. Actually, I think it might even been 3 years now we've been talking about these package of bills. Of course, I'm referring to the dispensary bills. A lot of folks called it the provisioning center bill. There was another bill that was attached to that, which is a seed to sale tracking bill. And then there was another bill that was not necessarily a part of those two, but was being lumped in with it. And that was, as most people know it, as the medibles bill. So it was to allow, specifically allow other forms of cannabis as medical treatment for patients. So these bills here, like I said, we've discussed them extensively on the program, so you can go back and find out exactly what they are. But what I wanted to talk about today is essentially these bills are dead. And that's big news. That's what I've been told. That's from sources in Lansing. The bills were stalled in the Senate Judiciary Committee, where Senator Jones, who is the head of that committee, was attempting to push these bills through. And multiple concerns were brought up about the bills. A lot of these concerns had to deal with potential monopolies being established, a three-tiered alcohol-like system being established for medicinal patients, along with a whole lot of other concerns. And a lot of these concerns just basically boil down to this whole thing is a mess. And these are not the type of bills that the House passed. There was significant changes made to them in between what the Senate was viewing and what the House had already passed. So that was a concern. And then I think the general public was able to get their input felt and heard, not just through testimony, but through you guys actually calling your senators and your representatives and telling them how you feel. And you made the impact. You guys made it happen. These bills died. What happened was Senator Jones was not able to get them approved through his own committee. There was senators on his committee that voted no. They didn't want these bills. They're not proponents of medical marijuana at all, so I don't think they voted no in a favorable fashion, but it was still no nonetheless. And with that, he was not able to get the bills out of committee. Typically, a bill needs to be voted out of committee before it goes to the rest of the Senate for a vote. Doesn't always have to happen that way, though, and that's what Senator Jones was realizing, is that his committee wasn't going to vote these bills out, and he thought that he would be able to get enough support throughout the rest of the Senate to just go ahead and get everybody else to vote on them without having to worry about his committee. And unfortunately for Mr. Jones, the Senate Majority Leader, Alan Meekoff, decided that there was not enough support for these bills, that they needed to go through the normal channels and process, and if they couldn't make it through there, they didn't need to be in front of the Senate. So ultimately, both channels were exhausted for these bills. They're not going to make it out of committee. They're not going to make it to the Senate for a floor vote. And so in reality, what's going to happen is that these bills will ultimately die. It would take some serious rehashing, some serious reworking for them to even be considered again. And with all of the other issues that are going on in Lansing, it's highly unlikely that our senators and legislators will really actually have time to review this matter any further. It's going to take a lot more work on top of what has already been put into these bills to come up with something that is a workable fashion. And I feel like right now, the language that was being considered and so on, it's so far away from what everyone would like to see. It really only represents a small minority of people out there who are looking to monopolize this industry. And I think the truth has been found out. So I say that's a good thing. I think this is a positive thing. I think it's an excellent thing for medical marijuana, as these bills would have most certainly been a disaster for the current program. And I feel that they probably would have been also a disaster for the patients in general. It would have, really cut into their ability to access their medication and would have created a whole lot of additional costs associated with their medication. So ultimately that would have been passed on to the patient. And I know that's not something that our patients can afford. So
I wish I had known that before you announced that, because I would have sought out the special effects for applause. This is I really wish I had. Yeah, because I mean, I wonder how dismayed he is by this, or is he kind of really disgruntled? Because
it's kind of interesting. That's a good question. In the news lately, you've been hearing a lot about how Michigan just passed a law outlawing anal and oral sex. I think you might have heard about that.
Yeah, I responded to that on Facebook.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I know that's a media twist on that story, and that's not exactly how it happened. But the guy who's in charge of that bill is Senator Jones. So he's been taking a browbeating pretty strongly, not just in the medical marijuana field, but in some other areas that he's been working in. And I think that's a good question, John. How is Senator Jones feeling these days?
I've been biting my tongue, but I got to say this. I wonder the people who wanted him to move towards getting into a monopoly, if now that it's failed, even just to get out of committee, are they going to demand their money back? So he might have to pull out that from his doggy bag wherever to his offshore account. I mean, it's because that's what's motivating a lot of these people. It's got to be.
You're absolutely right, and I think that's probably why you saw the senator actually try to take these bills, right out of his committee and go around them directly to the Senate floors, because I think, I don't know for fact, but I think he had a lot of motivating factors that wanted him to get these bills passed. And so he was trying to do everything he could to make that happen. And it seems, as of now, that's not going to happen. So, yeah, I would, round of applause, that's for sure. I mean, these bills were garbage. They're not anything that any patient would want to have. And they certainly were not looking out for the people of Michigan by any means.
What was your reaction when you found this out? Did you actually do a handspring?
Yeah, I did a little happy dance.
Yeah. No handsprings though?
No.
Broken
wrist, you can't do handsprings.
I was gonna say you damaged yourself a couple years back.
Yeah, so. We actually, we went in the arcade the other day. It was, and they had one of those punching bag things. I said, "Go ahead and take a swing at it." Like, no, thanks. I don't punch things. But anyways, off topic there. Yeah, no, these bills are dead as far as I can tell. Any more updates that come on to them or anything that comes up like them, I'll definitely be sharing with you on the program, and it's definitely something we need to keep in check. As far as the future goes, where does this leave us? It brings up some interesting questions. I mean, you've got municipalities across the state of Michigan that have already passed ordinances. You've got municipalities and cities currently working on proposed ordinances. I mean, I can think of Detroit right now, who's going through this process. Has over 200 dispensaries that are already in operation that could potentially be shut down by their ordinance. So with the state not moving forward and not really giving direction, and the judges continuing to muddy the waters on what is legal and what isn't, it puts the municipalities and the cities in a real sticky spot. A lot of them would like to see the economic growth. A lot of them would like to see all of the positive factors that come from these businesses, but they're also scared to move forward because they don't know exactly where they stand at. And it's going to take someone of an expert nature, maybe a medical marijuana attorney, to sit down and to be able to explain to these authorities exactly where things are with the law and what is legal and what isn't. And, unfortunately, a lot of that will depend on who you talk to. So they haven't really done a whole lot at the state level to clear up anything. And unfortunately, it's going to leave, the municipalities and cities of local areas on their own to decipher what they want for their communities. And, I say that saying unfortunately, but really I don't think that's an unfortunate thing. I think it's a fortunate thing because I think communities should have the ability to regulate what goes on in their community. And, that's the beauty of local control. So I think we should encourage those types of policies, and I think we should leave decisions like this up to the local municipalities, and instead of trying to get them to, go the way of the masses. Anyways, I'll move on here. I digress. A couple other topics I want to talk about this week. At All Points TV, we have quite a few different podcasts that air, and if you haven't had an opportunity to check some of those other ones out, I would encourage you to do so. One of the ones that does air on here frequently is a podcast that frequently deals with drug addiction. And I know that you might think, well, this is a medical marijuana podcast. What are you doing talking about drug addiction? Aren't you kind of the problem? And I would implore to you that absolutely not. Marijuana is not an addictive property, not whatsoever. And in fact, marijuana has been found, cannabis has been found, to be an actual potential treatment for opioid addiction recovery. And so this is something I think that hits home with our viewers here at All Points TV, and I think it's something that definitely applies across the board when we look at the nation and its growing addiction to opioids, whether they be, the illegal street drug form or the pharmaceutical type. Opioids are definitely an issue in this country, and it's not one that seems to be going away. It's one that seems to be growing. And I definitely think that we need to have more research done with treatment programs and trying to help these folks get off of these harmful drugs. I think there needs to be more research, or at least more regulations, when it comes to the prescribing of these drugs. We see more and more younger people and younger people being allotted these harmful, addictive type pharmaceutical opiate-based drugs for pain treatment therapies. And unfortunately, these are long-term type scenarios where we're going to see degradation of the patient due to the use of these pharmaceuticals. And I think we need to look at alternative treatment programs for these pain treatment therapies. Cannabis obviously is one of those ones that could be used not just for the treatment of the pain, but also for the treatment of getting off from these harmful, addictive opioids. So it's something I wanted to bring up on the program today because I know a lot of folks, again, like I said, you might think, well, marijuana, isn't that a drug? Well, I guess it depends on how you define a drug. And I think what we need to really look at is, what are the harmful effects of a substance? Does it have addictive properties? What are the social impacts? And I think you can see there's clearly a difference between something like heroin and something like cannabis. So, but again, I did want to point out cannabis can be used, and it has been shown to be an effective treatment for opioid recovery. And I think that's something we should see more of. And hopefully, doctors can start to take a look at this seriously.
I know from anecdotal information, I had a friend who went through heroin addiction, and she had been a heroin addict for 3 to 4 years, something like that. And on the process of recovery, she actually used marijuana quite heavily. But let's face it, there's no comparison between heroin and pot. It's like, and she said she attributes her success in staying away from heroin to smoking marijuana. So
I know a few people personally that have been able to recover from addictions, and they weren't even opioid addictions, but they were other types of addictions, such as like amphetamines or nicotine, other types of substances like alcohol, things that people get addicted to, and they've been able to effectively use cannabis to get off from these addictions. And guess what? They're not addicted to cannabis either. They used it for their treatment, and they don't use it anymore, or maybe some of them do use occasionally. It depends on the person. But this is an effective treatment therapy. It has been shown to work, And I think it's something that we should look at more seriously. I have a few patients that I deal with that are on methadone. You look at the long-term treatment outcome of that particular type of scenario, and it is not a positive one. So when our patients are on these types of therapies, we have to consider what is the damage being done to their internal organs by the long-term use of these types of drugs. And it is extensive, and they need an alternative. So, I think it's amazing that we continue to push the opioid pharmaceuticals in this country, that we continue to actually legislate for the leniency and for the continued promotion of these drugs like OxyContin, to our young people. It is mind-blowing that we're doing that, and yet we continue to turn a blind eye to cannabis when there's effective actual proof out there to show that this would be a more effective treatment. But anyways, moving on here. I got some other things I want to talk about, and we got to move on. But think about that one, all right? Recent story here I want to share with you. This is obviously here in Michigan, which most of our stories are talked about, but this was something I just wanted to mention. It's on MLive. You can check it out. It's actually a story from the Port Huron Times-Herald. A 70-year-old woman was arrested, and marijuana was seized during a drug investigation Saturday. Let's see, it says at about 6 p.m. at home in the 1000 block of Bay City, Forestville Road in Minden Township. According to a statement from Sanilac County Drug Task Force, the Drug Task Force assisted the Huron County Sheriff Department and Ubly Police Department when a drug investigation led them to the Sanilac County home. Investigators seized 50 marijuana plants, nearly 24 prepackaged bags of processed marijuana, 2 pounds of processed marijuana, marijuana wax, prescription pills, and more than $1,800 in cash. The 42-year-old Minden Township man, the 70-year-old Minden Township woman, and a 19-year-old woman, and a 20-year-old were all arrested. So a number of people arrested in this particular scenario, but I still think that you have to look at the headline in this one, folks, and go, okay, look, we've got a 70-year-old woman who's using medical marijuana for medicinal purposes. She is a registered patient. Maybe she's a card holder or a caregiver. Didn't we pass the law to stop doing this? Isn't that what this law was for, Michigan? Isn't that why we wanted to pass this? Is to stop wasting our tax dollars, our police resources, after going after somebody like this? Is this the criminal that you want to see your money being used to prosecute? I ask you, America, because that's insane. You're arresting a 70-year-old woman because she's got weed. And she's got a card. She's supposed to have it. And I also, you might say, well, Jeremy, they're way over their limit. Look, they said they had 2 pounds. They arrested 4 people, all right? Those 4 people could collectively possess more than 2 pounds, all right? And you might say, well, what about the bags, the 24 prepackaged bags of marijuana? Well, you've never split up product, for your patient? You've never dosed out your patient's medication? There's lots of reasons it could be packaged. And things like prepackaging come from the old drug world to show that someone was selling this product. These types of scenarios should not be applied to someone who has applied for the medical marijuana program. They have an automatic assumption that what they are doing is under the guidelines of their current medical marijuana law. So, and that's in the law itself. You can read it for yourself right straight from the law. So I think that to use that type of terminology against someone who's participating in the program, that right there should be prohibited. All right. But I can't tell you much more details of the case. Maybe these people were terrible people. Maybe they, had a bunch of Chinese immigrants in their basement locked up. They were selling them over to, drug lords. I don't know. But based on what's in the story here, isn't that why we passed this law? To stop going after grandmas who are using cannabis to alleviate their pain? Come on.
Well, something tells me that grandma might actually have something, much of assets they want to seize. So that's the reason why they like these kind of busts,
They took $1,800 in cash from her. I mean, it's sickening. It's sickening. How would you like that if that was your grandma? Took her money, took her medicine, arrested Grant. It's enraging, folks. So I hope justice can be done there. I hope the story isn't exactly what it's portrayed as in the paper, that there's more to it, but I can only give you what I got to go on. So, all right, other news I want to share with you. A couple stories, and these are outside of Michigan. Just want to keep you abreast of what's going on across the nation. And you can go to Marijuana Policy Project if you want to, Marijuana Policy Project or MPP.org, and look this information up yourself. It is their monthly newsletter, and if you're not subscribed to it, I would suggest you do. And also suggest you possibly become an MPP supporter. But here, let me bring you the stories from MPP so you can know what's going on. Story number 1, Maine legislation initiative is poised for the November ballot. So in a nutshell, looks like Maine might possibly be one of the next states to legalize cannabis for adult recreational use, and the voters in that state may be voting on it this November, and we'll have to see. So they'd be joining other states such as Washington, Colorado, Alaska, and we'll have to see if Maine's going to be the next one. All right. Next state, just a little bit further south, is Vermont. And it seems that there's a bill to regulate marijuana in Vermont. It is gaining momentum in their legislature. That's from their headline. It says here they approved a bill on January 29th, their Senate committee, which would end marijuana prohibition in the state and replace it with a regulated marijuana market for adults. Their governor, Peter Shumlin, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and several other current and former state officials have expressed support for the proposal. So imagine that if Governor Snyder actually stepped up and supported a legalized recreational marijuana market here in Michigan. Imagine if he stepped up and did that, and did so on the premise that we need to continue to grow Michigan's economy, that we need to collect the tax revenue like the other states are doing, and that we need to seize this opportunity. Imagine if he did that. All right, the governor of Vermont is doing it. He sees the light. All right, so if Michigan turns out sour, you can always go over to the East Coast there, grab yourself some lobster and some legalized weed, and you'll be a happy camper. We'll see. All right, next story. MPP is exploring options for Ohio medical marijuana initiative in 2016. So as a recap, last year, Ohio had on the ballot 2 different proposals for medical marijuana. They effectively confused their voting population. The votes that they were putting forth, the initiatives that they were trying to pass were for a monopolized scheme when it came to marijuana. And ultimately, I do believe that's why the initiatives failed. So, trying again here in 2016, Ohio just might. And if Marijuana Policy Project is involved, I can bet you that it's not going to be a monopolistic type of legislation or law that they're looking at. So, let's get the scoop here. It says MPP was all over the media in Ohio a couple of days after the state's biggest newspapers broke the story that we are beginning to plan an initiative to legalize medical marijuana there in November. So we'll have yet to see what MPP is capable of accomplishing in Ohio. They certainly accomplished it here in Michigan. So don't count them out. They might be able to get it done. And Ohio could potentially be the next medical marijuana state. Certainly would be interesting being right next to Michigan. So, all right, next state I want to talk about is Maryland. Maryland legislatures override the veto of marijuana paraphernalia decriminalization bill. On January 20th, the Maryland General Assembly voted to override Governor Larry Hogan's veto of a bill intended to fix the state's marijuana decriminalization law. Specifically, Senate Bill 517 removes criminal penalties for possession of marijuana paraphernalia, which was not included in the state's 2014 marijuana decriminalization law. So, Maryland, they have the decrim law there, which, basically knocks down possession of marijuana from a felony to a misdemeanor type situation. Like we've seen in some of the cities and municipalities across here in Michigan. They passed that for the whole state in Maryland a couple years ago. However, they left a couple things out, and one of the things was paraphernalia. So here you are, you could get a misdemeanor for having weed, but then you might get a felony for having the pipe that you'd smoke the weed in. Doesn't make any sense, and obviously they wanted to try to fix that here, but looks like the assembly voted to override the governor's veto, because he was going to veto it. So, pretty amazing there. Maryland, wow. Overriding a veto. That's pretty powerful. I think you got to have a pretty strong majority to get that done in just about any state. I don't know exactly how Maryland's legislature works, but I imagine it's similar to ours here in Michigan. So you can imagine if Governor Snyder vetoed a package of bills and then the the Michigan Congress went back and overrode his veto, that'd be a big deal, wouldn't it? All right, well, that's the news from MPP. You can catch more information about medical marijuana and marijuana in general across the country from Marijuana Policy Project's website. Like I said, mpp.org. Please subscribe if you haven't, and also support if you can. All right, one more story I got here for you folks this week I wanted to share with you. A lot of folks have been talking, especially this last year, about the different properties of medical marijuana or marijuana in general. And what I'm referring to are the types of cannabinoids. Cannabinoids are the things that are in marijuana that make up its medicinal properties. They're one of the things. And right now we've identified, or at least science as we know it, has identified over 80 of these different cannabinoid compounds in marijuana. We've been able to identify numerous ones, and right at the Genesee County Compassion Club, we can test for up to 8 different types of cannabinoids in your marijuana. So if you need to have it tested or you want to find out how much you've got, bring it in. We'll show you. Now, the interesting thing is that these different types of cannabinoids have different effects on the body and have different effects on the symptoms that the patient is experiencing. And what we're finding out is that certain types of cannabinoids should be used for certain types of things. Obviously, the one everybody knows about, or at least most people do, is THC. This is tetrahydrocannabinol. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. The word's way too long, but it's THC. You guys know what I'm talking about. This is the cannabinoid that's responsible for getting you high, or at least it's the one that's been attributed to the high that is known to be part of the usage when it comes to using cannabis. There's other cannabinoids out there, and THC doesn't just provide a high, it also provides a myriad of different types of medicinal alleviating properties. But another type of cannabinoid that we heard a lot about this last year was CBD. We heard about how it was effective for treating people with seizures. We learned how it was used for treating people with PTSD, or how it was used for treating people with Alzheimer's. A whole myriad of different types of diseases seemed last year were being tested or treated with CBD specifically. We saw the proliferation of strains that were being produced specifically to contain this type of cannabinoid, and also in some cases actually purposely exclude the THC cannabinoid because they're trying to eliminate the high that comes with the medicinal effects. I digress. CBD obviously has become popular in the last year, and I think a lot of folks have sort of become a little bit confused, almost believing that the CBD cannabinoid is somehow separate or somehow different than marijuana. And actually what it is it is actually a part of marijuana. So the confusion really started to come into play when we started to have companies out there form and start actually selling CBD-based products, as if somehow the CBD wasn't included on the nationally scheduled drug list. So I'm talking about the Controlled Substances Act, where it goes through and lists out specifically all of the different drugs that are prohibited and to what level and so on and so forth. And a lot of folks somehow believed that, well, CBD, it isn't on there, so it's not included. And it is actually, in fact, it is absolutely included, and it is absolutely prohibited. So I want to clear that up first on the show, because I think you guys need to know that just because something's CBD based, or maybe because it doesn't have THC, doesn't all of a sudden make it legal. It still is medical marijuana, and it still must be complied with, just like any THC product would as well. So this was actually a letter here from, I believe, the Food and Drug Administration, and it was in in response to some of these companies that had started to license themselves and promote across state lines CBD-based products. So obviously they're breaking the law, and the government wanted to make sure they knew that. So here, I'm going to read this note to you so you can see what the government has to say. Again, this is from the Food and Drug Administration. It is dated February 4th, 2016. FDA warning letters. Editor's note, dated February 4th. FDA alleged that claims made on companies' websites or Facebook pages, or in one case an Etsy.com listing, establish the products to be drugs because they are intended for use in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease. So if any of those things happen, it's a drug. Let's see here. All but 2 of the warning letters also state the agency has concluded that CBD products are excluded from dietary supplement definition because CBD has been authorized for investigation as a new drug for which substantial clinical investigations have been instituted. These letters note there is an exception to the prior investigation provision for a substance that was marketed as a dietary supplement or as a conventional food before the new drug investigations were authorized, but also present FDA's conclusion that this is not the case for CBD and invite the letter's recipients to present FDA with any evidence that this has bearing on the issue. So, in other words here, what they're saying is some of these companies were selling CBD-based products as a dietary supplement or as a natural health alternative and not as a drug. So that's, first of all, how they were able to get around that. They were selling it not as a drug. And then they're also trying to say that it wasn't marijuana because it's CBD. The FDA is coming back and saying, okay, well, number one, it is a drug. Number two, you can't do this. You can't call it a dietary supplement or a natural health supplement because we've already issued out licensing for somebody to study that as a drug. Here you go. That's your government. So because we've told somebody that they have the ability to exclusively study, license, maybe even produce this as a drug product, that we will not include it as a holistic or dietary supplement. What I'm kind of wondering here today is, and what I want to pose to you as the viewer is, do you think that that's a legitimate reasoning for deciphering whether or not a product should be considered a drug or a dietary supplement? Because that's essentially what your government did, is they said, well, because there's a company out there already researching it as a drug, you can't count it as a dietary supplement. I mean, if you're going to say that you can't count something as a dietary supplement, it seems like there would be some sort of scientific-based reasoning as to why you don't include something as a dietary supplement.
Yeah, I like to get somebody who's...
I would think antifreeze would qualify as a non-dietary supplement, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean?
But I like to get these people in who are so anti-marijuana or anything else, or so regulatory, with the eye towards regulations, and say, what's the purpose of all this?
You're right, but that's the problem with our government, is they continue to hide behind their agencies, hide behind their laws. Like this here. Who is the FDA? The Food and Drug Administration. They send this letter out, but it doesn't have a name on it. It's just the Food and Drug Administration.
That's supposed to stop you because you're dealing with the authority.
If you were one of these companies, you got the letter from these guys directly.
Yeah, just...
So again, yeah, you're right, John.
Yeah.
Who are these people? And just like the president has stated that he himself doesn't have the power to change marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2, that is actually the absolute lie, because it is the President Nixon, who put it there in the first place. So of course, who would have the power to remove it? It would be the president. So I would implore the president to actually review his position on that, his authoritative stance on that. We've seen him use executive orders for a myriad of other things. I don't even know if he'd need to use an executive order for this particular action, because again, it was the president who put it there, who put this federal drug scheduling in place in the first place. All right, that was not an act of Congress. Okay.
Yeah, I don't understand.
So for Obama to say that he doesn't have the authority to do that, it's just passing the buck.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He's been using executive actions for everything now. Why can't he? If he's so on board for medical marijuana, or because he's angry about the unfair sentencing between the different minorities or different classes or whatever, he could just do one stroke of a executive order. He could do away with all this, but he won't.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, John. I mean, it's just passing the buck because nobody wants to take responsibility, nobody wants to step up, nobody wants the onus. And you see it on things like this, and then you see it on the backside when there's problems, just like it's happening right now with the Flint water situation, and nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. This CBD policy that the government has is nothing new. It's just them stepping up and reinforcing their current policies. And really what they're doing is they're protecting their corporate interest. They're protecting their special interest, their coffers. That's what they're out to protect. It's not to protect the consumer. It's not to protect the patient. Certainly isn't to do anything for these companies. You're looking at putting the same product out on the market to the same consumer. The difference is that one paid to do it and the other one just went ahead and did it. There's a number of companies listed here, and actually, into my interest, one of the companies listed is a Michigan company that was putting out a CBD product. I'll go through and list the companies here. You got ABC Productions, Dose of Nature, Green Garden Gold, Michigan Herbal Remedies, Morgutorium LLC, Pain Bomb, and Sanate. These are the different companies out there that received letters from the FDA, FDA warning letters to remove their CBD products from their dietary supplement definition. So, I don't know, pretty interesting. I think, honestly, cannabis should be considered a holistic therapy, should be put in the whole holistic medicine category. You look at the other types of herbal remedies that are out there, and cannabis falls right in with them, and it really should not be excluded from that family or from how we professionally use it, classify it, treat it, so on and so forth. And I think it should be holistic practitioners who are the ones that have the ability to continue prescribing or recommending this to their patients or helping administer this to their patients. It needs to be people who understand how this works, who have an intimate knowledge of the plant matter that they're working with and its effects on the patient, both the anecdotal and the side effects, whatever they may be. That's something that you have to have an intimate knowledge of, and that you're never going to get from a pharmacy or from a farm tech. It just can't be done. There's too many different types of cannabinoids, just like you're finding out here. So, but there's no protection for you if you think that just because you don't have THC and it's a CBD only product, somehow it doesn't qualify as a federally prohibited scheduled substance. I'm here to tell you folks, it absolutely is a prohibited substance. CBD is no different to the government than THC. So just be careful out there. You want to make sure that you're not trying to jump on a bandwagon or get misled with misinformation and end up breaking the law. It's tough enough to try to make sure you're compliant here in Michigan anyways, and so we certainly don't need additional things like this muddying the water any further. We've got our judges and our legislature to do that for us. So, all right, guys, that's the news this week. That's the news from Michigan, your county, and from around the nation. And I want to say I'm glad to be back here in the studios at All Points TV. I definitely encourage you to check out the other podcasts they have here. We're going to have one of the city council members in the studios here coming up soon. So check for upcoming podcasts here at allpointstv.com. And we also have some other exciting shows coming up as well with some local community leaders. So make sure you check out what's happening. If you really want to know what's going on here in the city of Flint, this is the place to check it out at. So real news happens here, folks. All the other stuff is just paid advertisers. All right? That's all it is. Okay. Thanks for joining me here this week. Guys, I'd definitely like to remind you, join us at the Soup Kitchen if you can. Enjoy the extra day you get this month, and enjoy your medication. If nothing else, come on down to the Compassion Club and enjoy that too. All right, guys? Thanks for being with me this week. Keep tuned, keep the faith, and I love you. See you here later. Bye.